Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us. We spent the entire day discussing not just what is business continuity, what is it not, how do you go about achieving business continuity frameworks, what are some of the roadblocks, and how do you go about continuing your communications process to ensure that a business is not just able to keep its lights on, but is able to sustain it. You'd have heard me in the previous session that I was a part of. I said there's a big difference between business continuity and business contingency. And for the final session of the day, we'll take a little bit of a relaxed view into how do you begin to actually develop a framework for business continuity planning. Remember, you would have heard all of the speakers before didn't just talk about the idea of that there's one framework that they adhere to. There are multiple. How do you make yourself familiar with it? How do you get yourself to practice it? How do you create the right sandboxes for failure and the right environments to fail 7 times but stand up the 8th? My name is Ali Hirji, the lead on the siberXchange advisory, faculty at Durham College. I work here in Durham region, and I also have the honor of coming to you live from this beautiful facility here in the town of Ajax at the St. Francis Center. This land belongs to the peoples of the Mississaugas of the Scugog Island First Nation, protected under the Williams Treaties. I want to thank Mayor Collier again for all of his support and the team at siberX for realizing the first of its kind cybersecurity studio in North America, or dare I say, in the world, period. I also want to thank Palo Alto for all of their support during the first half of the siberXchange. And my next 2 panelists are individuals who you've engaged with me on the Power Hour, but more importantly, are individuals that can help you understand how do you get started on your framework. I've said this repeatedly, that business continuity excellence is not a matter of just luck. Excellence doesn't just come by accident, it comes through habit. The ability to train, to repeat, to practice. And the excellence of business continuity and the best habits around it can best be understood by not just practitioners in the field, but by individuals who are at the forefront of putting together training programming that can help you achieve that level of excellence in your planning and in your business continuity strategies. My 2 guests today are great trailers for what is also coming for you tomorrow in Women in Cybersecurity, and I'll waste no more time in welcoming both Janet and Shelley to the final session of today's siberXchange. Shelley and Janet, welcome.
Thank you.
Janet, let's begin with you. When we start thinking about business continuity planning frameworks, the first thing that comes to me is, what's the mission statement behind a business continuity plan? The key to strategy, in my humble opinion, is you need to have a mission statement. You need to have a vision statement. Can you talk to us a little bit about what is the mission statement behind a business continuity framework?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ali. So the mission statement is really important in terms of what your company mission is in order to determine the business continuity. What are your mission? What is the main purpose of your business? How is it that you're going to be able to continue your business? And what is it that your mission is? So for example, a mission statement could be like your company integrates seamless technology to transform ways that your technology can work. So if that's a sample statement of a mission statement,
right,
then you have to make sure that your hardware technology is on par with your business area, and that your budget will be a bit more in the amount of how much budget to put in. And it all ties back to your mission statement. Whatever your mission statement states is what your budget will be more toward, and also how you're going to be conducting that business continuity plan.
I really like this aspect about how you're going to be conducting the business continuity plan, because how you conduct something ultimately indicates that there's a book of procedures that you follow, there's a book of processes that you might reflect on. Shelley, this is a great sort of window to sort of have you walk into the home of business continuity planning, and I want to get your perspective of, from a SANS environment, what kind of courses are available? What kind of training is available to help senior leaders with thinking through that mission statement of business continuity. Shelley?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be here this afternoon and for the question. Well, SANS has a plethora of training opportunities. And I think in all organization, if technology is key and having technology working is key, which I would think encompasses everyone in today's world, then ensuring that you have a plan and trained individuals that can respond to the risk that may occur if all of your employees are sent home to work due to COVID.
Right.
How long is that going to take you to reset? So having a training plan for your employees allows some of those conversations to continue to happen. When you look at what can SANS provide specifically around business continuity planning, we have some courses. Our 504 course is a course all about incident handling related to dealing with unplanned risks. So that's a great course when you're looking at planning for risk. We have some management courses, management leadership courses that talk about planning and the importance of planning and who do you plan with, the scope of your planning, again, taking in the risk. And then even our basic security essentials course has a whole module dealing with risk, because risk and security plans and risk management are something that everybody in the organization should be aware of and thinking about in their day-to-day.
I think the slogan of the siberXchange thus far has sort of built up on the "we are cyber" thing, right? And with siberX having this very strong ethos around, you are not just we are cyber from a diversity perspective, but that cybersecurity impacts everyone. And Shelley, I want to sort of pick on those elements of business continuity training that's available for various levels of individuals a little later on, and shift to something that you mentioned around how do you understand business continuity, and from a risk perspective and a privacy perspective, and come back to Janet and ask her something from a perspective of what you just said, looking at it from a strategic lens. Now, Janet, I've always maintained this, that it's great to celebrate your strategies, or to study your strategies, but it's also good to study the results of those strategies. And often when I'm in sessions with different groups where we're looking at what did we achieve, how did we achieve it, especially in light of the pandemic, I always like to conduct the four-letter word SWOT. I like to do a SWOT analysis of what we've done. Can you help me understand, in terms of the strengths of a business continuity plan, what are some of the strengths one needs to focus in on, or what, in your opinion, are some of the strengths of a good business continuity framework?
Yeah, so I really think that you really need to concentrate on your core business aspect, which area of your business is the most important. And I usually have 4 steps that I concentrate in terms of business continuity planning. The number one thing is obviously your project scope and planning. What are the business areas are your critical in your business mission? And number 2, conduct a business impact analysis assessment to kind of categorize the criticality of each business rating. And number 3, your continuity planning. It has to be a continuous effort in the strategy, how you're going to continue your business planning with any emerging threat involved as the time goes on. And then finally, with the approval and the implementation, you must have the support of senior management in order to really have a business continuity plan. Without the support of senior management, it's not going to fly. So those are really the 4 areas I really kind of start thinking about when it comes to planning a business continuity. Again, project scope and planning, business impact assessment, continuity planning, and finally, approval and implementation.
It's so important to hear this from you, because the plethora of experience behind you, the different environments you've worked in, the different institutions you've worked in, and the different geographies where you've worked in, all shape in or factor in the way in which we create our business continuity frameworks. And I want to sort of, again, catapult back from Silicon Valley. Let's catapult back to Alberta, and Shelley, bring you back into the conversation. I know the motto behind yourself, life is simple. So tell me, in simple terms, when it comes to delivering training on business continuity planning. I know SANS holds a very high standard of who can become a SANS accredited trainer. There's a lot of processes that one goes through. But in terms of the trainers, what are their backgrounds? Is it just cybersecurity folks, or do you find people who may not necessarily translate into a cybersecurity professional, but they've got experience in different industries? Tell us a little bit about the strength of your trainers.
Our instructors are, and just to sit around a table with them and hear them talk about their different experiences is mind-blowing. They are, number one, they are passionate, they are curious, and they are experts and practitioners, everyday practitioners in their field. So we have everyone from consultants who left very good careers with big, well-known companies to work as consultants and teach with SANS, who have now become curriculum leads. We have CISOs from universities that are SANS instructors. We have, some officers, police officers, military folks. We have people from the financial institutions. You name a vertical, we probably have a SANS instructor that is actively teaching for SANS. And part of that teaching is they are living what they're teaching. So, a SANS instructor doesn't teach every class. A SANS instructor teaches what they know and what they work in every day. So they are dealing with current situations. I was just talking with a student today, and he said, I took the course a year ago and I want to write the exam. Well, I know that the instructor has probably updated that curriculum, because one of our promises to our customer is our training is up to date with what's happening in our world today. And so our SANS instructors, we have high expectations of them. They have high expectations of themselves. And that learning and the ability to teach and kind of entertain at the same time is really key. But by far, they are the most sought after people in the industry when having conversations with customers and clients.
Shelley, if it's okay, I would like to keep the conversation with you and then come back to Janet. And that is this aspect of, you just mentioned you had a conversation with a student today who had done the course a year ago, and the skill set has changed. And this is a common criticism of academe, which is, we're teaching or we're preparing curriculum, which typically when we're training it, by the time the students graduate, a lot of that becomes outdated. So I think you've flagged a very important issue, and I encourage the folks on siberXchange to have some discussions around, the role of academe and the role of industry-based certifications. I digress slightly, and I'll come back to the question that I had was, in light of the pandemic, have you suddenly seen an increase in the amount of interest in BCP-related courses or BCP-related skills, or has it stayed status quo?
Oh, well, it certainly hasn't stayed status quo. We've seen a lot of new interest, certainly a heightened interest in cloud security, a lot of interest in that, and our course load for that has advanced. We're launching new courses, it seems like every month now, that have been in the process of being written, and now they're starting to launch. So some of that was already planned. It just so happens it's being planned now. So a beta class or a new class that we were maybe only going to run, once or twice, we're like, okay, we need more seats in that class. We need to run it more than we thought we were going to be running it because of demand. So all of our classes are live online right now. There's a few live events that we're offering to individuals to attend, with the option of going live online or on demand at the end of the day if they feel they don't want to show up to class. But they are filling up. The demand is still high, and just getting those people trained. And giving, the training for some organizations has also become a team building, a way to put their teams together again.
Yep.
We have several organizations that they'll send a team of 4 or 5 to a class, and then they're all in the capture the flag competition together. And so it's also become a team building. So things have not slowed down at SANS. They've changed, but we are certainly still in high demand with organizations. And we have done a lot of a lot of summits where we've left them free, and we've had phenomenal numbers attend those events for training and knowledge building.
I think that concept of business continuity as a team building practice is something that we want to uncover, we want to talk about a little later on, because there's a lot of fear that goes into with business continuity, because you do have to have discussions about certain jobs that may be under threat, certain processes that may no longer follow the same code that we've been following before. So I want to come back to that a little bit later on, and again bring in Janet to discuss a little bit more on the strengths of a business continuity framework. You know, we say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so that we listen twice as much as we speak. How important is feedback and a feedback loop for our business continuity frameworks? And I'll contextualize that a little bit for you. Business continuity plans don't just happen when, at least in the case of Ontario, I really don't want to speak about the situation in the US, but in Ontario, we had a moment when we were told that certain things were going to happen, you know, proactively and preemptively, that schools were going to get shut down, etc. And we were given sufficient notice about a state of emergency. Business continuity plans didn't begin the minute the Premier said, we're going into a state of emergency. They've been in progress for a while, for all sorts of disasters, pandemic or not, separate question. How important is it to have feedback from every layer of the organization into that plan that the CISO may have developed? Janet?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that question, Ali. It's very crucial to have that feedback, because the more perspective we get from all kinds of aspects of different level of employees is really important. Just to give an example, and we had a situation in a manufacturing shop where we needed more sanitizer and wipes, and nobody was mentioning about that. And somebody actually make the call to our VP and mention that to him. And next thing we knew, he went ahead and ordered a bunch of those and brought it to the manufacturing shop. So if the employee did not reach out to our VP to make that phone call, that wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely.
So it's really crucial to have that feedback, because at the end of the day, you know, the management is real busy trying to continue the planning, but without the feedback, how can you continue to plan? So it is really important to constantly solicit feedback from all employees, not just one, but every single important department should be participating in order to have a successful plan. And also realizing what is your priority, what is the number one priority every single day. On the end of the day, did I meet that priority? So example, sanitization and checking on your employees' health, if they're taking their temperature, and making sure that priority is set number one every single day before you even start the day. And at the end of the day, checking in on everybody, and communication is also a big factor. You need to also communicate to all your employees to make sure they are doing their due diligence, the proper protocol. In order to continue with our planning, we need that feedback to know what's working, what's not working, how can we improve. Everybody plays a major part.
Fantastic. And I really appreciate that point that you raised, which is, as companies, we don't just, we create strategies, but you don't bet on strategies, you bet on people. You invest in the people. And really having that feedback and having everybody speaking to that business continuity plan, while challenging, represents a very strong strength of a BCP framework. As is tradition with SWOT analysis, first we begin with a really fancy little dessert of celebrating ourselves and all the strengths that we have. But then we start going into the weaknesses and some of the salty, bitter realities of our weaknesses. And Janet, if I can keep this conversation with you, in your experience, what has been at least one or two of the major weaknesses that you've seen in BCP or business continuity planning frameworks? Anything that you can reflect on, maybe a pointed example or just something a little theoretical?
Yeah, I was actually going back, as you mentioned, people are important. Honestly, the biggest weakness is still the people. People not being aware, people are not doing a proper protocol. If you get so busy in the morning, you forgot to check your temperature, you just walk into the door and later on finding out you're not feeling well. That's a red flag right there, right? So I would have to say the biggest weakness is the people and not being aware, not doing their due diligence due to busyness or whatnot. But that's how you have your coworkers here to remind you, hey, did you check your temperature yet? Hey, are you feeling okay? Hey, I noticed you were coughing earlier. Is everything okay? So even though people are the weakest team, but you can also strengthen it by helping each other out, calling out, hey, have you done this? Have you done that? So that we can be more well-rounded and help defeat this weakness that everybody has.
Yeah. Shelley, if I can sort of tag you into this conversation as well. When you teach about business continuity planning, I think we've sort of heard from Janet is that there's no black and white kind of equation over here. There's a lot of gray area. There's no right and wrong. Now, of course, teaching about business continuity planning is not the same as teaching somebody how to build a bridge. There is room for some error, so on and so forth. Can you help us understand from a SANS perspective the marking process and how do you get evaluated on some of your business continuity thoughts? Is it multiple choice-like scenarios? Is it contextual? Help us understand how the SANS philosophy on understanding how a student has understood a particular concept, such as business continuity planning.
Okay. There's a couple of ways that SANS, and SANS is in the, I always say SANS charges for their courses, but SANS has a ton of free resources, and SANS as a whole is eager to help either a client, a customer, an individual who's struggling. I need to make a business continuity plan. COVID hit us, we didn't have a plan, now I'm in trouble, or maybe I'm planning for the next disaster.
Right.
What do I do? What first steps? So SANS, on their website, we have a lot of free resources. So if you go to www.sans.org/free, there's over 176 free resources. There's templates there. There's all kinds of support there. And even reaching out, if you don't find what you're looking for, if you reach out, there's someone at SANS who will say, let's work together, let's find an answer to your questions. When you look at our training and our certifications, SANS has certifications for the majority of their courses.
Correct.
We recommend, because we're always updating our courses, that you write your certification within those 4 months after you've taken that course. And different certifications have a different passing grade. A lot of them, I believe, start at, your pass grade has to be 74% to pass the course or the certification for that course. And then you can continue to update or that registration, that certification. And when in doing that, you stay in the field, you collect CPEs, and every time you update or you get your certification renewed, you get any updated information.
Correct.
So any changes you make to the course, you get that information when you renew your certification. So there's a lot of opportunities. If you score over 85%, you're invited to be on the SANS Advisory Council to discuss those particular topics that course address. So lots of opportunities to engage and stay engaged, and lots of opportunity to use the resources that we offer as well.
I want to work with that and the continuity of being able to engage with resources. Philosophically, that sounds like there's a lot of exchanges that are happening. You have the ability to provide input into the course as well as take the course. And I would believe that with business continuity planning, it's not prescriptive in any way, and it's not programmatic. It's planning. It's constant planning. It's never perfected per se. Janet, would you agree that one of the elements when it comes to or one of the weaknesses, I should say, when it comes to business continuity planning is that we have a very limited ability to make mistakes? And what I mean by that is how much of a protection do we need because we're trying something new? Let's take an example. In business continuity planning, let's say we're now talking about telehealth, and now we are delivering virtual mental health care. Yesterday we had a conversation with Connects Health, the town of Ajax, talking about virtual mental health services, using Zoom, etc. Mistakes are bound to happen. Does a good business continuity plan have some room and some precautions for if a mistake happens, here's how we respond to it? Or is it one that simply shuts down on no mistakes and a zero tolerance for any mistakes? Talk to us a little bit about that element of how we understand weaknesses through mistakes.
Yes, I think it's really important to understand our weakness through the mistake. And there's no 100% perfect solution. There's bound to be mistake made as you continue to go, but that's where also lessons learned. And you're constantly actually revising your business continuity plan when there's an incident that happens or when there's a mistake that happens, you learn from it and you
Right.
draft a better plan and continue on. Your business continuity plan is not set in stone. You can revise it at any time you want to, but I would definitely suggest anytime there's a new technology in place or a new business in place, any changes to your company business mission or anything like that, you'll need to take a look at your business continuity planning again. And there's really things that I want to also share with you. The items that you find in a BCP, business continuity planning documentation, number one is really your continuity
Right.
planning goals. What are some of the goals that you have? And learning about your weakness, how are you going to implement that into your goal? And then your statement of importance. What is the most important thing in your business continuity planning? Your statement of priority, your statement of organizational responsibility, your statement of urgency, timing, and last, your risk assessment. All those all come into play in terms of business continuity planning, and think about your weaknesses in the lens of all those different categories as you continue to plan your business continuity plan.
Thank you for that. And we've sort of now come to, through half an hour of our conversation where not only have we looked at the strengths of a sound framework, we've looked at the strengths of good training, and not just good training as a one-off spasmodic affair. We've looked at it as training as a continuous process. And I think training also, as we've just discussed, is a very interesting approach to understanding BCP, which is how does training factor into business continuity? Secondly, we've looked at the weaknesses. Some of the weaknesses that we've spoken about are people, but more importantly is having a room to have mistakes happen and how we respond to those mistakes. Some can be a lot more agile, some less so. And these are all elements that factor into the strengths and weaknesses of a strong framework. I now want to continue with this journey that we're taking, holding the hands of the SWOT, and come to opportunities. And I've typically been starting with Janet, but Janet, I'll give you a bit of a break here, and we'll go to our friend again. I cannot help but pull out a quote from the image behind her, and that is travel often. Because travel gets you to see many things, gets you to see many people, gets you to see different folk, and gets you to really understand different experiences. Shelley, tell us a little bit about now when it comes to SANS courses. And again, I'm using the pandemic as the axis for this. Have you seen that now the sectors that are interested in cybersecurity training, business planning, business continuity planning, have you seen the sectors evolve? Is it many other new sectors? Like, are you seeing people from the service industry now interested in these courses? Are you seeing people from the travel industry? What are you seeing in terms of the interest in SANS learning material?
Wow, we are seeing everything. So we are seeing, transportation industry where you think, well, they're not going to be spending any money, but something's happened. Some of their people have, they've downsized, they've lost some key people. There are a lot of people in this COVID world today that decided, you know what, I think I'm going to take that retirement I was going to wait a couple more years for, but I'm out. And so we are seeing, organizations, even, from oil and gas, transportation, healthcare. Healthcare is different on the Canadian versus the US side because the US side is private. So they depend on people, spending money. There's not a lot of people in the US right now putting their hand up to say, I'll do elective surgery because there's other issues, there's other things happening. So as far as training, we are seeing everything. We are seeing companies that didn't have continuity plans, that never ever thought the day would come where they would be sending all their employees home to work. So, at the beginning, we had companies that they couldn't work or their vendors weren't set up to be working. So the company could work, but the vendors that they typically work with weren't set up to be working in this new environment.
Correct.
And so because of that, we have had requests for new courses to be written. We have had requests for more of our net wars within organizations because, the net wars and, allows for them to team build, learn how they communicate, build stronger communication skills, because now you're not sitting across the table or sitting over the water cooler having those general conversations anymore. most of us are tied to Zoom meetings.
Correct.
To the extent that they are so planned and scripted. We're just not having the, oh yeah, I saw the lights blinking in that room the other night. Wondered what that was all about. And it's like, you did? And so none of that is happening anymore. So we have seen everything happening. And I don't think we could have guessed, when you talk about business continuity planning, all the risk areas that got identified, all the areas where people did really great.
Sure.
And then how the action plans that everyone had to respond.
Action plans. The key to a business continuity planning framework is really the action that you instill with it. It's not just, here's the prescriptions, here's what, it's the actions and the follow-ups. And I think this goes back to that strength piece that we spoke about, which is the feedback piece and the ability to have those follow-ups and the ability, as we were just hearing from Christy Honey, for counselors and mayors and their staff to now meet not once every quarter, but almost once every. Really appreciate how you've flagged business continuity in the context of an opportunity. And I want to just give you folks just a few 30 seconds to breathe a little bit and relax. I know you've all had busy days, so I'll take a little bit of the load here and just talk a little bit about opportunities and business continuity planning from a siberXchange perspective. As you all know, we all sit on the advisory. siberX had finished the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference March 9th. If I'm not mistaken. And Shelley, you were there. And the day after that, we went into lockdown. And Maddie's team, I believe, all of us are on the board, so we knew this. They had a Smart Communities Forum planned for June. They had a Healthcare X plan for October, November, and CISO Forum as well. But part of their business continuity plan was, okay, what are the strengths of our current processes? What are some of our weaknesses? But they looked at opportunities. And I think siberXchange and this, if you look at siberXchange 1.0 and siberXchange now in the studio, it really reflects on how business continuity planning can represent new opportunities for business, secure opportunities for business, and ways to retain revenue lines, but also grow revenue lines. So Janet, I'll come to you with, as Shelley so eloquently portrayed the opportunities now that we're realizing and the exchanges that we're now realizing, how much can a business continuity plan allow for opportunities and allow for us to explore new things? You'll see many leaders today will say, growth is not a vocabulary or not an item in our vocabulary, it's about sustenance. How do you factor in opportunity and measuring new revenue opportunities in a business continuity plan?
Yes, thanks for that question, Ali. I think it's really important to always think about new business that you can possibly take into your business continuity plan. I mean, given the pandemic or any threat situation, you'll kind of come again and take a look at what are some of the business that might not be needed anymore, or some of the business that needs right now. And for example, right now, the whole world is all going virtual. So there is a need in that virtual technology area to ramp up that arena, right? So you can be taking a look at what sort of business can I take on in virtual when everybody's virtual? Should I invent another product that'll be easier on everyone, like siberXchange did 2.0, a platform for everything, socialization, everything all together in one? I think that's creative. And you just have to continue to innovate what sort of new business you can partake and try it and put it into your business continuity planning. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. That'll be a lesson learned. You move on to another one and continue on until you get to where you want to be.
Opportunities are often measured by revenue generation, but they should at least be measured by the kind of impact it has within the organization itself. So I want to stick with the same train of thought that we've had, Janet, and let's talk a little bit about this opportunities piece. Because while we can look at it as, can our business continuity plans factor in new revenue lines, factor in new engagements, new customers, so on and so forth, I think business continuity planning also gives you an opportunity to reflect on your own cybersecurity posture and where you can make some changes. How much does a business continuity plan allow you to even change, with some agility, your own cybersecurity practices?
Yes, I'm constantly thinking about cybersecurity whenever we have new business coming in or hardware, software related, and that's a constant going on an ongoing basis. And every time I think of cybersecurity arena, I would, in terms of business continuity planning, again, I would kind of put my business assessment impact analysis hat on. And there's actually 5 steps in the business impact analysis. For those that don't know, is again, identify the priority. If is your new business that's coming in, is a priority to you, you definitely want to note that. And identify the risk of that new business that's coming in. What are some of the risks that may partake? And the likelihood of that risk that will happen if you were to partake this business, and an impact of it, what will happen, the impact of the risk if you were to take on this new business. And also resource prioritization. What are some of the folks on your team that you can pull to help work on this new business or whatnot? And again, it's really prioritizing on what sort of business you want to take on, and looking at the cybersecurity aspect of it. If there's a risk to it, what sort of mitigation measurement you're going to take if you're going to take on this new business.
New business and threats is ultimately a topic that we need to discuss, and we have another 20-odd minutes, and I want to now dive deep into the trenches of threats. And while it may not seem very easily translatable between how can a business continuity plan reflect a threat, I think as our audience is about to experience is that there are threats that are embedded within a business continuity plan, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Shelley, we'll start off with you. And you brought up this very important aspect that is as companies, as individuals have lost revenue sources, as companies have seen dwindling profits, some more than others, some less so, the interest in investing in training. At one end, it can be well respected, and you'll find organizations realizing that they need to do certain things, especially as more seasoned folks maybe retire and do not want to go through this process, and now you have folks with lesser experience. But there's also the aspect that it costs money, and they may not be willing to invest in training. SANS does have some free resources, et cetera. Can you talk to us about how you're addressing the threat of lack of funds, but still providing some training and some value to the community?
Oh, yeah. SANS has done an excellent job of making available many of our summits since COVID-19 hit us all and we were all sent home, so that everybody could participate, allowing people to plug in, because many organizations went through, some of their people with their skills left the organization, and some of them only had a little bit of the skill, and now they needed it more right away. There was a lot of staff reallocation that was happening. I mean, anybody that's got friends on LinkedIn, I don't know about you, but I sure got a lot of posts saying, oh, change jobs. I'm like, wow, everybody's changing jobs. So that impacted other companies' business continuity plans with their people. So SANS has certainly made available, like I said, those free resources are phenomenal. SANS instructors have been invited and are doing, 1 hour, 2 hour workshops with organizations on specific topic areas that they want to talk about because they need to learn something. And so our instructors have graciously said, yes, we will do that. There is no cost to a company to do that and to have those presentations being made. So we're really looking at how do we fill the needs of our customers, of protecting us from the threat. Nobody wants to be attacked. Nobody wants to have their security systems hacked. Nobody wants to know that there's been a breach. Nobody wants their information out there. None of us do. And none of us want to hear about any of our friends going through that. So SANS has done a very sincere job of, I always say nobody's left behind. Great. So if you've got a need and you can't figure out how do I make this work, I have a whole team, I need to get them somewhat trained to do what they're doing. And this happened pre-COVID, but they were one-offs. Now we see a lot of organizations where COVID-19 really shook up their business continuity plans. All of a sudden, part of the people that were on their plan to be doing things aren't there. Or they can't be working at home during the day hours because they've got kids at home that aren't going to daycare anymore. So there was a lot of other things that came into the mix. And so as organizations and customers have reached out, I feel we have done a great job as SANS in responding to those needs.
And it's all about timing and response. which takes me to the threat, to expand a little bit more on the threats of a business continuity framework, or the threats to a business continuity framework. And Janet, I'll come to you. And this is this aspect of timing. And I really want to look at it from the perspective of, perhaps this is my understanding, and it may be a little loose, but we're never really citizens of our business continuity plan. We're always tourists in it. Because it should, I would imagine, as contexts change, as situations change, our business continuity plans also change. But a business continuity plan doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. How easy is it for us to set a bar of, all right, every 2 months or 3 months, we will revisit the business continuity plan? How do you create some structure around that? Or at least, at the very least, how do you know when is the right time to revisit the BCP plan?
Yeah, so I know it's typically once a year at least, but for me right now, since the COVID-19, I've been looking at it every single week, to tell the truth, because you don't know what's happening. Every day is different. Something else happened or this happened. And for right now, given the pandemic is still happening, I'm looking at it on a weekly basis. And again, think about your priority. What are my priority again for this week? What are some of the things that's been happening around my employees, remote or on-site, and identify what are some of the risk factors that I'm seeing or not, and how do I mitigate those, and just really, to protect your employees, your secure systems, and how do you recover if something happens, and really how to sustain your business. Those are really the areas I really look at on a weekly basis for right now. But typically, it should just be a once-a-year thing, or if you have a change in your business. But given with the COVID-19 situation, I'm looking at it on a weekly basis. So every company is different, but for me, I would say look at it on a weekly basis.
Got a couple of questions here. And I'll take one, which is really focusing on the aspect of timing again, but in a bit of a different way. And that is, in larger organizations, the ability to time the reviews of business continuity plans can be challenging, especially with a diverse but disparate workforce spread across the country, as is, for example, the case in the work that you do. Also familiar with my own work at Durham College. But smaller companies, less so. Fewer people can gather them around quicker to gather inputs. Would you say, or rather, what would you say is the differences between business continuity planning frameworks for small businesses versus large businesses? Janet?
Yes, I would definitely say there is definitely a lot more differences in between the two. I mean, a large corporation, you definitely have a lot more business at stake, and smaller business is also hard in terms of they're so small that if all their money is in one shop, it'll be gone. So it is hard, but that's when you really need to plan ahead in terms of, okay, if this business doesn't fly, something happens to it, is there some other business I can come up with quickly that I can mitigate or start a new one? And given the needs of what's going on with the given COVID-19, if you are able to produce a product that everybody can use right now, for example, masks, I know we're in shortage of that, any other items that you can think of, can you produce that? Maybe that will be an area that you can look upon. I know a lot of restaurants are also suffering because people are not going in to eat, but it's been creative that they opened up outdoor patios for people to sit outside, even delivering food. And maybe the people are, for the cooking instructors, they can start a business of cooking instead if they're a restaurant business. Just to be creative in terms of what kind of business you can partake. So for the small owner business owners, you have to come with a creative plan and how you're going to thrive if business continue going on. And for the corporations or larger businesses, you have to look at your business continuity planning on a weekly basis, I would say, given the COVID-19 situation. So depending on what kind of business you're in, you can't stay away from business continuity planning. You have to plan ahead in order to survive.
Right.
It's almost like survival of the fittest, right? You have to kind of see, where do you fit in here? Where does your business fit in given this pandemic?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, you plan for today, but you prepare for tomorrow, and that's at the heart of a good business continuity plan. I'll take in some more questions, and we have about 15 more minutes, so Shelley, we'll try to run through as many of these as we can. One of the aspects of certifications is the ability for multiple types of learners to learn multiple different things. one of the questions here is focusing on the aspect of how are SANS courses preparing me for engagements with vendors? Do vendors play a role in shaping some of the SANS courses, for example, product vendors, for example, hardware vendors, whatever have you? Or is it agnostic of that, and you sort of just learn a very a high, not necessarily a high level, but you learn how to deal with vendors in one particular process or two? Do you have buy-in from the Ciscos of the world, the Palo Altos, et cetera?
So SANS training is agnostic, but we do train on, like in our cloud courses, we do train on Azure because that's a big product out there that many of our companies are using. So the key in understanding that is key. And so that is part of the presentation. But SANS overall is agnostic. And, you know, if people want specific, sometimes we'll get questions. We really want training on this. We don't typically go there to the depth where we're going to tell them, like, this is a great product, this isn't a great product. It's more educating so that you're asking the right questions to get what you need at the end of the day, things you need to be aware of. And certainly with everything being online, there's a lot of information out there. If you know, the consumer is looking for information on something or a product out there, there's a lot of ways to do the comparison. And, you know, part of doing your vendor shopping is knowing what those questions are to ask when you're doing that shopping.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's crucial that you've underlined this aspect of shopping, because when you look at the psychology that we're all in right now is you need a patch for everything, and the first thing that you see on the rack you're going to get, but there's a process that you have to follow, right? And there are numerous cases of late where, and Jan, I think you alluded to it in a positive way, but there are negative cases as well where someone has rushed into making a purchase on PPEs, for example, right? And forgot or has no details on where they purchased it from, just saw the cheapest price, and now all of a sudden there's a recall and you don't know which product you have in your hand. So there's a certain element of psychology that goes into business continuity planning, which from the looks of it, Shelley, comes strongly from SANS courses. You were saying, Shelley?
What I could say is the last time in my lifetime that I remember business continuity plans being so important was when the year 2000 came around.
Oh, yes.
I mean, if we go back to 1999, we had more business continuity conversations. They were in the news. They were to the extent that a lot of people were up till midnight, 1999, waiting for something to happen a second after midnight. I mean, those business continuity plans, I bet they were some of the most polished.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I recall the stroke of 2000 back in the Middle East, and you know, we were praying to all the gods that we knew that our computers didn't go on. Otherwise, how would I get on ICQ, which was the only way I could speak to people? Anyways, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the business continuity plan, you know, sometimes I equate it to kind of how we look after our lives. Some people have really done a good job of end-of-life planning, or should they get sick, and most people have not done a very good job at all.
Yep.
I'd like to believe that our business continuity plans overall are in B+, A+ shape. But knowing it's one of those things that are day to day. Remember, all these, you know, I haven't ran into any security departments that said they had extra time. They all had too many projects, even some of the folks that are working at home right now, to go back and review that business continuity plan where you look at, you know, some of the key leads on the team have now left the organization, and maybe you don't even have the role at that organization anymore. And it was like, well, the director was supposed to do this, but we haven't had a director for the last 6 months. So, you know, having a big team with accountability to that business continuity plan, not just the CISO, not just the director, but a whole team of people, I think is key to keeping your organization ready.
Shelley, you do such a great job of sort of giving me the next chapter of our conversation with these key words that you keep throwing out there, and accountability is another one. Now, we'll work with that. And Jan, I want to phrase this also in light of some discussions that have been happening, not necessarily at the siberXchange, at least 2.0, but siberXchange 1.0 certainly had a lot of discussion around insurance and liability. When you're doing business continuity planning, and forgive me if I've misunderstood it in any way, but you are in that process of getting a business to operate in a form and a function that is not common to them. They haven't done a lot of this. It's not a lather, rinse, repeat kind of environment. It's new territory. It's new environments for them. How does business continuity planning get reflected in the types of insurances that we maintain, both cyber insurance and other levels of insurances that we may purchase to keep ourselves protected? Janet?
Yeah, so I know personally for me, I purchased cybersecurity and insurance through LifeLock to protect your information, because there's so many information out there that you might not have the time to always check on yourself. And in terms of business continuity planning, if you have to outsource, let's say your data backup to a vendor, you got to make sure that your vendor also have some sort of insurance just to make sure what are your agreement with them, so that it comes a disaster, is your data going to be safe? Your data backup going to be safe with them? And they better be safe with them. But if something happened with their shop or their store, what are you going to do? So those are the type of things, kind of gray in a way. I mean, yeah, you have insurance, but when it comes down to it, something happens, yeah, they'll pay for it. But what's going to happen to your data? Can you get that back? So there's still a risk, but you just try to mitigate your risk whenever you can. There's not 100% where you can be, resolving all the risks. There's just no way, but that you can bring it down to a lower level of a risk versus high, and how to mitigate your risk. And definitely, I would say insurance would definitely play a big part. But when it comes down to certain arena, it's hard. I have to say, it's hard. But insurance is definitely an important thing to have.
Fantastic. And I really hope that the team at siberXchange, perhaps you and our advisory, will have some discussions later on post this conference on insurance and the changing shape of cyber insurance in light of the pandemic. I think is a separate topic, or there are at least a number of topics that can come out of that. And I'm sure cyber insurance probably factors into some of the SANS courses as well, and we can certainly have some discussion about that later on. We've got about 6 more minutes, and I have to feed in this question because I think it holds a lot of merit. I think all the questions hold merit, but this one particularly so. My philosophy when it comes to testing and examinations, I've always said, testing is not about celebrating what you know, it's about collecting what you do not know. How do you test a business continuity plan? How do you reflect on whether it's going to withstand any change in environment, and how do you measure it for quality? Janet?
Yes, it's very crucial to test your plan whenever you make changes. So there's 3 types of tests. There's structural walkthrough, where you can actually go through a whole entire plan, make sure that every single step is stated what you're supposed to do. And there's also the technical exercise plan, where some of the strategy I put in your plan is it working. You have to actually go through a whole entire plan and make sure that you are doing what it's supposed to say, and what you're doing is what it's stating on the plan. And then lastly, there's also what you call the hot site testing, where you actually go to a remote site and work with a vendor to have all your equipments there already in place, and have your data back up as if you have a disaster, and see if you can bring up your critical business there, and have your testers able to connect to it. So I also want to mention also cold site, warm site. Hot site is the most expensive, but cold site is just pretty much an empty room where you have to set up your own equipment and network. Warm site is where you have some equipments there, but you have no data. You have to bring all that in. And hot site, where everything is there, you just have to bring your data from a location that you have saved your data at and plug in to recover everything. But I have to say, going through the actual disaster recovery plan with your business, can you do it to your business? Because if you don't do a trial test to see if everything works or if your plan works, your plan is not working.
Yep. I think Shelley.
And yeah.
Yeah, you broke off just for a slight second, but I think we got the gist of what you said, which is the ability to test what's working. And I want to work with what you just mentioned and come back to Shelley for some closing few comments, and then we'll sort of come to a conclusion of day 2 of the Cyber Exchange. Shelley, from your perspective, Of course, now, when you've been delivering training and you've been delivering testing, a lot of it was driven in person. You have had virtual environments and hyper-virtualized environments. Where do you see the future of a lot of these trainings going? Do you realize that you might be doing more gamification-based learning? Do you realize you might be doing more team-based training as opposed to individualized training? Where do you see the future of training and business continuity sort of best practices frameworks going?
I think it's all of those and more. As we are changing and living in our new environment, as several people said on today's earlier discussions, it's like we all thought we were going home for a couple of weeks, maybe 6 at the most.
Right.
So nobody was really planning any big changes. But now, as we're all sitting at home months later with no foreseen kind of end to this, it's like, how do we plan differently to engage our people? Because you still need that, if you're going to be working and responding to an incident, you still need to be able to work together and communicate. What does that look like now? It's changed. We're all in different environments. Some of our, colleagues that work from home don't even have proper internet service.
Yeah.
So their ability to do certain things become restricted, or they can only work during certain hours when they can access internet somewhere else. So as far as training, team-based training was something that we were certainly starting a while ago, certainly in different forms of government. We've been doing it for some time, but now on the enterprise side, there's more and more organizations looking for that, because the ability of your teams to work together during an incident, during a crisis, is key. And sometimes we think teams that can work together because they sit beside each other every day can work together. That's not necessarily what happens. It's interesting to see who puts their hands up and who becomes the leader right away. So gamification is big. Looking at our young people has become more and more also a higher interest, because we have a lot of young people now and schools that are all online. There are some parents that used to say, my kid's not getting a computer till they're X age, and now they're all on computers.
Correct.
Because it's a change in our society. So I think, this pandemic, although sad for many, many reasons and loss for a lot of different reasons, has also given us an opportunity in teaching, business continuity planning, future workspace, diversity in the workplace, the role of women in the workplace, leaders in the workplace. It's giving us an opportunity to do some phenomenal things. And so I'm excited about that.
And on the light of phenomenal, I'll give you one closing statement, and then Janet, a closing statement as well. If anybody wants to get involved in the phenomenal work that you're doing and the phenomenal training available, what's the best way to reach out to a SANS representative to have a discussion? Because I will say this, and I commend you for this. Just like we don't condone checkbox security, we don't condone checkbox purchasing on training. A lot of it is a collaborative exchange and a process. Who would folks need to reach out to at SANS in order to find out which training is best suited for them?
If someone's interested in training, I'm very confident that you could just go to the SANS website, www.sans.org, and say, I'm interested in training for myself or my organization, and you will get referred to the right person or to a live body that will know who you should be talking to. If somebody's listening today and they say, well, I want to talk to Shelley, go on my LinkedIn, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to get you set up with the right person at SANS. SANS has several different departments. All of them are great and wonderful to work with. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everybody feels that they can create their security training life and have their questions answered and be comfortable and confident in the direction that they're going.
Thank you so much, Shelley. And Janet, in terms of your own practice, is there any resource that you would recommend, or a paper perhaps that you've read, or maybe even a case study that people should read, besides the great work that you're doing on best practices in business continuity planning?
Yeah, so actually, there's a lot of resources. I personally love SANS Institute. They've got free resources, webcasts I attend all the time. YouTube's got a ton of videos there as well. And NEST, if you guys are not familiar, the National Institute of Technology has got lots of different frameworks you can also read upon.
Sure.
So there's a ton of resources out there. It's just a matter of whether or not you're willing to read it, you're willing to take the time to attend. But I said that you got to seek out those resources. If you just go out and Google business continuity planning, I'm sure you'll see a whole bunch of items there as well. And my closing thought, though, I wanted to also just share, if you did not remember anything, remember the 4 phases of business continuity planning, and I want to reiterate again. Do you know what those are? And project scope planning, your business impact assessment, your continuity planning, and last, your approval and implementation. And you must get approval from the senior management before implement. So remember those 4 phases for business continuity planning.
We'll make sure that we get Maddie to put that on a shirt and to distribute that at the next in-person conference whenever that does happen. To our audience, as you can tell, Shelley and Janet have been composed, collected, calculated, and very concise. But don't let that fool you, because the world of business continuity planning can be quite challenging. I akin it to almost being in a boxing ring, where you size up your opponent, you size up your challenge, but you don't act aggressively right away. You find the right timing, and then you enable and you implement what you need to almost seamlessly. The best way I can conclude day 2 of the siberXchange after this fascinating exchange between Janet and Shelley is remember what Muhammad Ali said, and that was float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I don't think you could have a better buzzing of ideas than you had today with Shelley and Janet. Shelley and Janet, thank you so much. And to our audience, we'll see you again tomorrow for day 3 of the siberXchange, where we will be focusing on women in cybersecurity and looking at how far we've come and how far we have left to go. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Janet, Shelley, have a good evening.
Thank you. Night.
Thanks.
Night.